just the idea of like showing people in a dignified manner was something we really wanted to do, because we felt that Nigeria has this reputation that precedes it, for right or wrong, of being like this dangerous place that everybody's like scared, or like you're going to get ripped off, or but actually the Nigeria I know is full of humor, it's full of silliness, it's really light, and we wanted to show the Nigeria that we grew up in, the Nigeria that we know, and not a caricature or a stereotype.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, two young boys explore the metropolis of Lagos with their estranged father in director Akinola Davies' drama, My Father's Shadow, which was screened as part of the DGA's Global Cinema series. The film tells the story of Aki and Remi, who reconnect with the father who's been absent for most of their lives. But the reunion quietly unravels into something deeper, as they witness both the city's magnitude and their father's daily struggles during the political unrest of the 1993 Nigerian election crisis. My Father's Shadow is Davies' feature directorial debut. His other directorial credits include episodes of the series Foresight and Black to Life. Following the Global Cinema series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Davies spoke with director Rachel Raimist about filming My Father's Shadow. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thank you for being here. There's a beautiful audience. Everyone loved the film. You got big applause.
Thank you.
Sorry that you can't see them.
That's okay. It's all right.
So I just wanted to, start by congratulating you. And I think, the film, we'll dig into what the film means, why you made the film, all the things. But for the folks in the audience, I want them to understand the significance of your name. So Akinola meaning bravery, bringing wealth and honor, right?
The brave one, the honorable one, the wealthy one, and, derived from two distinct Yoruba words, Akin meaning bravery or valor, and Ola meaning wealth or honor. And the name signifies a hope that the bearer will grow to be courageous and achieve success and respect in life, which you have done and you are doing, and you are living up to your name. We are very, very proud of you and what you have created and how the world is seeing the film and receiving the film. So congratulations for being selected as the UK's submission for the International Oscar category, the first film representing Nigeria. A round of applause for him. This is truly a big accomplishment.
Thank you so much.
So I'd love to talk about the film shot on film. Not many people are doing that right now. So shot on Kodak. How did filming on film, shooting on film, prepping, rehearsing, how was all of that impacted by going what I'll call old school shooting on Kodak film? Can you talk about the why, the what, and some of that process of how?
Sure, with pleasure. First of all, thank you for such a stirring introduction. I don't think I've ever been introduced that way, and I think it actually really lends itself to the sort of fuel that our parents put in our names. So yeah, thank you for sort of honoring that name. I feel very moved by that introduction. But to your question, why shoot on film? I mean, I talk about this a lot. It's one of my favorite things. I feel I'm not like a purist or anything, although whenever I start sentences like that, I think I end up proving I am a purist. But I think film is one of the most beautiful formats aesthetically. And I don't think it's right for everything, but I think aesthetically, it's preference-wise, it's beautiful. I mean, I shoot loads of commercials digitally, and I also think all that's really beautiful. But the choice to shoot on film has multiple layers for me. One, it's, I'm very well aware of classic Hollywood and the history of Hollywood. Just growing up in Nigeria and then moving to the UK, we grew up on Hollywood films, you know. And then equally in Europe, I've seen classic European films, and they seem to have all had their moment on celluloid. They all, every culture, or at least the cultures that of cinema that mean so much to me, have had their moment on celluloid. You know, they've had their classics, and it just sort of irked me that Nigeria maybe missed out on this. You know, because of how Nollywood's constructed. Nollywood, you know, Nigerian cinema predates Nollywood, but Nollywood is the sort of exceptional standout that Nigeria has carved out for itself, and that started on VHS. So we kind of, even though that's an analog form, it still negates us shooting on celluloid in that way. So I wanted to try and add to the growing number of us, like, you know, Aim Fair, another Nigerian film, was shot on celluloid, and I wanted to sort of add to the canon of Nigerian films that people can reference today and tomorrow and into the future of being shot on celluloid. Because I think Nigeria deserves it. I think our industry deserves it. I think our crews deserve to see their work on the most beautiful format. I think Lagos deserves to be photographed on the most beautiful format. I think Nigerians deserve to see their city, or at least Lagos, because not everyone's from Lagos, on the most beautiful format. So politically, for me, there was that reason. I mean, logistically, it's a nightmare. And it definitely presented a lot of sleepless nights for both my producers. But I think once they understood the virtue, at least that side of things, I think everybody could get on board. And I shot 35 mil in Lagos. I shot my short film Lizard, which won Sundance on 16 as well. So it helped in that way. When aesthetically, we're shooting a period film. So Super 16 helps with the grain, it helps with nostalgia, it helps take you back to 1993. And then lastly, I would say it is my debut feature, and for so many of us, it's our first within the crew, which is Jermaine Edwards, my fantastic cinematographer's first feature as well. But we'd been shooting documentaries for the last few years about Black life in the UK, trying to show that Black people exist in all corners of the UK, and we've been shooting predominantly on celluloid and digital. So we've had a bit of a shorthand in how we work. But what I really enjoy about shooting celluloid is the pace. Actually, is the pace of working. I wanted to enjoy my first feature. I wanted to have time with my crew. I wanted us to savor the moment, to be tactile with one another, to be able to just acknowledge where we were. For so many of us, it's our first. I really wanted us to enjoy it. I wanted us to not feel like we needed to work at a breakneck speed, to focus on rehearsal, to focus on communication, to focus on what's in the frame, because equally shooting on 16, we only have a certain amount of rolls a day that we get to shoot. So yeah, for all those reasons, and also my leads, two of my leads, the boys, the brothers, it's their first film as well, and I really wanted them. I didn't want to put them under any like duress and any other pressure, you know, like we're all under pressure. So if we can create a space whereby everyone has time to do their job and is given the respect within which to do their job, then I think it would allow us to enjoy the moment. And hopefully I think the crew will attest at least somewhat to enjoying the film, basically. But yeah.
Beautiful. So did shooting on film impact your prep process? Were you more precious in terms of, say, location scouting and spending more time rehearsing, less takes because you're burning more money? Certainly, I don't. Is there a lab on the continent, or were you shipping film? You know, how did it impact some of the nuts and bolts on the craft, the decision to shoot on film?
Yeah, so there's no lab on the continent. We had to ship film. We had a couple of very keen young filmmakers who sort of wrote to me to sort of shadow, heard what we were doing, and one of them was sort of based in Dublin. She's Nigerian, but based in Dublin, but she ended up being in Nigeria when we were shooting. And she kind of was meant to come back halfway through the shoot. So we were just like, okay, why don't you take some film with us? And another producer is going to take some film back. And then you just keep going back and forth. I mean, logistically, it's a nightmare. I mean, no one really wants to be in that position where like you're taking cans through scanners consistently and worried about what you could lose. But, I'm not really worried about that because film has existed since the beginning of cinema. So I sort of think it's resilient and durable. But when it comes to prep, yes, we didn't have very many takes. Maybe in the first few days, there was maybe an excess of takes, but one of my producers, Rachel, said, look, if you feel you've got it, let's just move on. You don't need another take if you feel you've got it in the monitor. And I guess that kind of gave me the permission to like have a lot more confidence in my decisions. And once I kind of knew that, maybe max we would do like 2-3 takes and then we would move on. But yes, we did a lot of rehearsal. Like I said, we had a lot of time to be able to do that. And I think the boys had an opportunity to understand what they were trying to do in any given scene. So we would rehearse with Shockbear. And again, obviously they're kids, so we don't have endless time with them as well. So it kind of helped us stay quite focused and quite honest on how we manage their time. Yeah, and I just think it's a blessing. Obviously, in every situation, I can't work on celluloid, especially maybe in more documentary forms, even though I just said I was shooting film on documentary. But yeah, I think prep, it really helped. Me and Jermaine and my brother, we would plan every scene, like what's everyone feeling as per scene and where should the camera be. So we would, I was really terrified about the idea of blocking because it just seemed like such a science. And I'd been very fortunate before in my short film, and I had like Shabir Krishna shoot Lizard, and he and Christian Epps on Lizard just really took over. And it was a learning experience for me as much as the one I directed. But on this one, it was my first feature, it's Jermaine's first feature. So we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants in many ways. So we just really wanted to be super prepared. Like, we knew what everyone feels in every scene. So we wanted to be like, hey, we need a close up for this feeling. We need a wide for this. So we were just really methodical in our planning with how we would shoot. And I think that's probably what it's always been like shooting on film anyway. So I think it really made us feel a lot more prepared for what we were doing.
Yes, it was beautifully executed. Can you talk about the cast and the casting process? You had an experienced actor, and then was this first film for Marvelous and Goodwin, the boys?
Yes, it was their first film that they'd been in. So Marvelous and Godwin, we found them really fortuitously, if I'm honest. I had started the casting process, maybe I'd gone back to Nigeria maybe in October, and we started shooting in February, and I'd gone back for 10 days. And in that 10 days, I went to acting schools in Lagos for kids, in Ondo, in Ibadan, like different states. I went to boarding schools. I went to whatever drama schools we could find, like some church, community centers, wherever our casting director, Shaheen Baig, and the local casting director sent me, I basically went and, and I met loads of kids. I saw loads of self-tapes to begin with, and I met loads of kids. And initially I found 2 kids. One of them, I think he was more fascinated with the fact I had loads of tattoos and I had really long dreads. So he was really like excited to like meet this sort of complete, like, maybe I think they thought I was a rapper or something. And so he was really sort of obsessed with me. He was really engaged. He did all the prompts really well. And then back in Lagos, we found this other kid who was like really good, but he felt more like a TV kids presenter. Closer to the shoot. So we left with a little bit of confidence. We're like, they're probably not right, but at a push they could do it. So when we came back a few weeks leading up to the beginning of prep, we did another round of casting, And a few years before, or a year before, I'd done an acting workshop to try and understand the craft of acting and show the actors the sort of respect they deserve in terms of what I have to offer and how to communicate with them. And that was all. It was with an amazing lady called Evelyn Dewar, who teaches a lot of young Black actors in London. And it was all about play. It was like a playful workshop. So we got Evelyn down to Lagos for about a week to run a workshop with our casting director, Shaheen Beg, and Kemi Lala, our local casting director. But we needed extra boys. We maybe had 10 and we needed 20 just to really see something wide. So we got self-tapes. And I don't know if you've ever seen self-tapes, Nigerian self-tapes, but they could be a TV show within themselves, but they're completely hilarious. And I picked a bunch of kids, and Marvelous and Godwin, they probably had quite problematic self-tapes, but they were really engaging. Like Godwin could do angry really well. So I was like, let's have him. Marvelous kind of flipped his eyelids and did like a bit of a horror thing. And I was like, hey, he's a weirdo, let's have him. And then we got a few other kids. And I didn't know they were brothers because, you know, in the speed of the way we were working, they were sort of mislabeled. And then on the 2-day workshop we did, again, on the first day, they were mislabeled. So we were working with all the kids. The kid who was obsessed with me, just like, once I cut my hair, he had like no more interest in me whatsoever. The sort of presenter kid, my brothers thought he was a little too sort of, a little too enthusiastic. You know, he's definitely like a kid's TV presenter. So everyone was a bit like, I don't think we'd be able to manage dealing with that for the next few weeks or whatever. And then I saw these two boys who were very tactile. They were like, I think Marvelous had his hand on his brother's feet or something. And I was like, something's going on here. These two are maybe forming a relationship, and we should keep an eye on that. And then they were also helping other kids, like almost directing other kids. Like they remember the dialogue and they would remind other kids, like give them prompts and stuff. And I was like, okay. And then the next day they got labeled properly and we realized they were brothers. So immediately everyone got really excited. Everyone was like, wow, the dream was always to try and find brothers. And actually there's 2 brothers here. So everyone was kind of hoping that they got through the second day. But they really had a capacity to remember dialogue because their mother is an actor and a scriptwriter. So they already had it sort of worked into them how to remember dialogue. Not necessarily how to perform the dialogue, but they knew how to retain it. And that was half the battle, right? Like if they can remember the lines, that's half the job done. So yeah, they were kind of the outstanding candidates. I was a bit, not going to lie, I was a bit nervous because I was like, he's an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. How are they going to carry this film? You know, but everyone on the day, my team was really convinced that these were the right guys. And I kind of knew they were right, but it's still a lot to put on kids. So I sort of relied on the team and we picked them. But I also have to say, hats off to Shokwe Dirisu. I think Shokwe is probably one of the most incredible talents I've had the pleasure of learning from and working with. Not only did he come on board quite early on, but the moment we met, we had a really strange interaction with another person in a park, and the way he diffused the situation was with so much grace, so much empathy, so much warmth to this person who was sort of acting out of pocket. And I knew in that moment, like, for right or wrong, like I'd happily spend like 6 to 8 weeks with this person. I don't need to be convinced of his acting. I know he can act, but the virtue of the man he is, I quite like to be around that sort of man. And I didn't realize I was asking him to not only be their father on screen, but off screen. He really took the brunt of like working through lines with them, through scolding them when they needed to focus, through encouraging them, through helping them with their manners on and off set, because for them it's quite overwhelming. But as soon as their mum's out of earshot, they're having a time of their life. But we're also there to do a job, and with there being so many professionals on set, we also need to ensure they take away a sense of what it means to be professional, even though they're kids, and also talking to them like they're professionals and not talking down to them. But yeah, and then I also have to talk about the local cast from Nollywood, because I think all our peripheral characters, albeit, you know, you don't get as much time invested in them, but I think the moments they're on screen, they really shine through. And I think that's a testament to Nollywood. I think Nollywood has talent in spades. Maybe it's just an application of how they perform that might, in many instances, feel a little different. I think Nollywood is a lot more theatrical by nature, because that's what Nigerians enjoy watching, a lot more of a theatrical performance. But I think all those actors, when they came to the table reads, it was all about, like, I really don't need you to be theatrical. I just need you to try and embody the character and the people that you are. And if you think there's a resonance with you and that character, I want to sort of see you bring that out. And even when they did, it was like, okay, if it's too much, just dial it down a little bit. But again, it was almost like working with fully polished. I mean, it was like working with fully polished thespians, because ultimately, like, Nollywood, they make films at the speed of light. You know, they have so much more experience than at least than me, for sure, with my first film. So again, it didn't really feel like I had to do a lot of directing. It just felt like the curation of all these characters did so much of the heavy lifting, that all I needed to do on any given day was kind of guide them in the right direction, or encourage them, or tell them I needed a different look in terms of whatever emotion they were presenting at any one point in time. And yeah, and also Shaheen Baig is Emmy-winning. Shaheen Baig now is she's a badass. So I also leaned on her in terms of what felt right, you know, in the moment. But really and truly, yeah, the casting side of it, I thought was going to be really hard, but actually it turned out to be fairly straightforward. Maybe the only role that gave us a lot of issue was Baba in the amusement park, because to him and another actor, they just had flawless auditions, and it was really hard to pick. But I think ultimately we picked Mr. Shola because he was actually more of the age of the character we needed. He felt a lot more, I don't know, just like a lot more seasoned and cultured in a way that you can't quite put your finger on. And that's why we chose him in the end. And Winifred, who played the mother of the boys, you know, we sort of tossed and turned between her and one other. But I think for the small time she's on screen, we needed someone to just be quite powerful. And she, on every take, just like the same performance, like 10 out of 10. So yeah, that was the casting, I would say.
Yeah, the casting was wonderful. The performances are so strong and grounded. And yeah, that's my one wish, was that there was more of the mother. You feel her throughout the film, like she's always present, but why don't we get to know more about her, or sit with her, see her story just a little bit more? I know this is...
Do you know what? That question has come up so many times. And I you know, I can empathize with that. I think it's a fair point. It's a fair, you know, it's a fair sort of pushback. But I do think what we tried to do is ensure that she felt present all the time with the children, with the way they advocated for her, whether it was at the beginning of the film that, like, they shouldn't leave, and they always knew, like, right from wrong based on what mum would do or what mum would say, you know. And I think, you know, it felt to us in the script and in the writing of it that she kind of was always present. You know, we definitely tried to sort of work her in, but everything we did felt a bit heavy-handed, and I think in the way the story's constructed, like, there's just a little bit of smoke and mirrors in there where you don't know if, like, is it the mother who's late or the father? You know, there's a little bit of that in there. But, you know, in the moments where you saw her, like, briefly on a balcony or whatever, she was actually supposed to be a lot more prominent in those moments. But I think it felt too much of a flag post to be like, hey, like, look over here, look at what's going on. So we sort of dialed it down. But what we did try and ensure is that there was a more of a sort of maternal and female presence throughout the film. not only just off camera in terms of a lot of HODs and stuff to surround the boys and there's a sort of energy on set, but most of the characters that break the fourth wall are female characters, actually. And we also tried to say that in the periphery when the boys were looking around, there was a lot of mothers carrying babies on backs or mothers working or mothers in earshot and female characters in the bus and always in the area. So, yeah, we tried to work in as best as possible. But like in these situations, we really had to lean into what felt best for the story. And I think in as much as I'm a complete mama's boy and I would have loved to have had more of my mum in there, I think for the fact she's not in, I think she's revered enough from how Fola speaks about her in the bar or how the kids advocate for her or how even Mr. Shola asks about Bola and how people speak about her. We felt at a point that maybe that's enough in terms of everyone always referencing the fact that she's not there type of thing.
Can you talk a little bit about the script and how much is memory, how much is fiction? Definitely there's the context of history that we'll get into, but you and your brother wrote the script together loosely based on your story and your absence and relationship with your father, or what can you share about the origins of this script in the film?
Sure. So that's a really tricky one. Like, how do you separate what's fiction, what's facts? I would say the maybe the biggest things that are fiction is the fact that the family's working class. We're definitely middle class Nigerians. I think maybe what is fiction is that the boys' age in relation to them being with their father. Like my brother and I, we lost our father. I was 20 months and he would have been around 3 years old. So we don't actually know him. Like, we didn't really get to know him. But we grew up in Lagos. And if there's one thing about growing up in Lagos, you're going to go to many parties, because that's kind of our culture. And every time we would go to a party at every age, at any point, you kind of have to obviously, you have to show your respects to the family of whoever's hosting you or elders in the area. And as soon as we would say who we were, because I'm actually named after my father and I'm the youngest son, as soon as I would say my name and my last name, people would sort of hug me and hug my brother and say, oh, we knew your dad and we loved your dad. And they would tell us an anecdote about him. Oh, he stole my girlfriend. Oh, he was really charming. Oh, he had a lot of style and he wore these big goofy glasses or whatever, We would always have all these projections back at us, projections that we didn't own or we didn't know. So, and then the older we got, we would get told about the stealing of the girlfriend or they used to smoke weed or all these things that you protect kids from. The older we got, people would start telling us, well, you look more like him, you talk more like him and this kind of stuff. So a lot of the manner in which we were able to build Fola's character is based on a lot of those stories. Is also based on the memory in which our mother kept of our father. She kept pictures, she kept clothes, she kept jewelry. She really kept his legacy alive as much as possible. She was always available to talk about him. And I'm sure it's probably not always the easiest thing to be widowed at 40 with 4 children, but ultimately she ensured that we always had an access to him through her, basically. And building the character of Fola was relatively, I wouldn't speak for my brother, he's definitely the brains behind writing the film, but we definitely had a lot to work from. And then equally with the boys, I think Remi's based on Wale and Akin's based on me. I'm a fierce mother's boy. I think during the writing process, Wale learned that, for much of my life, I was actually quite upset with my dad's absence, even though he passed through an illness, right? It's not his fault he passed, but I was always upset at the fact that I didn't have a father, and I was upset at the fact that everyone else got to have this father and everyone else got to understand what it meant to be a man and had this sort of someone to protect you. And I think my brother, on another hand, he always idolized our dad. He used to tell people our dad was like a secret agent who'd left the country or something wacky like that. But I never said that. I was quite straight up. I was like, yeah, my dad's dead. My dad died a long time ago or whatever. But those characters, we were able to extract versions of ourselves, and pour it into that. And then stories like the beach scene, for example, it's actually quite funny because a lot of that story on the beach scene is all factual in terms of my dad's loss of his brother who drowned and why my brother Wale got his name, basically. So all that is actually based on real life, basically. And stories that everyone would have heard. And funny stories, I didn't know a lot of that was based on real life. Like, I only picked it up after the fact when my uncles would see the film and be like, wow, like you honored your uncle who you never even met, and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, a lot of that was really fused in, but I guess where the boys lived we grew up in Lagos, they're outside of, there's a lot in there that's us, but there's a lot in there that isn't in a way. But I would say at this point, it's all spaghetti. Like, it's hard to untangle, to be honest, yeah.
Thank you. Can you talk about how those feelings, that emotionality, the sort of ancestors, ghosts, spirits among us, all those things translate into the visual storytelling, the way that the camera's moving, floating through the streets of Lagos, all the big, beautiful close-ups, the sort of, way that you approach the camera and the visuals to translate that very personal story?
Sure, thank you. Firstly, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Jermaine Edwards, our sort of Jamaican-British cinematographer. Jermaine has always been invited to the ball and never asked to dance. By that I mean he's obviously like a black cinematographer who lives in Nottingham, so he doesn't even live in London. He lives outside of London, and he's someone who's like always operated for other cinematographers, always been on big projects, but never been given the opportunity. And I think at the stage where I decided to work with him on this, I even had some doubts, but actually I think what I realized in the situation is that given a certain level of responsibility and trust, and wanting that opportunity, he would give the shirt off his back. And a lot of what we conceived was just both of us sort of forming this relationship of shooting documentary and sort of working together. And, to be honest, we borrow a lot from the States. I think a few people we really revere. Malik Saeed, who shot Belly. I think he's for us, in terms of imagery, he's like one of our North Stars in how he lights black skin. And we always reference Belly. I know most music directors reference Belly, but we certainly do. And then equally, Sean Pete has definitely had a lot of influence because, listening to him on podcasts and watching some of his stuff, he's not trying to make things beautiful, and I really love that because I think actually I don't want to make things beautiful. I want things to reflect how we see them in life. I don't want to see in every corner. I want some corners to be completely invisible to what is, because it's what the naked eye would see. So yeah, and obviously Bradford Young, just there's a lot of people in the States, black image makers that we really revere and really love. But when it came to sort of paying homage to the ancestors, I think it was actually quite, I don't want to say easy, but I think if you know enough about Yoruba mythology, all our deities exist in a form of nature. And I think that's really the way we decided to sort of honor that. I mean, we didn't want it to feel extensively ethereal, like we're trying to force something down your throat. We just filmed nature. We filmed nature in a way that we really respected it, whether it's from the minutiae, or whether it's looking down, or whether it's looking up, or whether it's in the middle of a big metropolis. Nature is going to exist, and nature is going to dominate in a way that isn't forceful. And creating a story from the perspective of kids allowed us to be that curious. It allowed us to build the camera and the language of the camera in a way that we can have these moments that we focus on ants carrying a big ant away, or we focus on a bunch of swallows on telephone wires flying away, because I think children have that innocence they have that honesty, they have that curiosity, and we wanted the camera to have that, because really the film is from the perspective of the kids. We wanted to be low, we wanted to look at faces. Equally, it's going to seem like all my references are American, but my favorite artist is Kerry James Marshall, and one of the artists he references, and I think his name's Charles White, and he has a series called Humans of Dignity. And I showed Jermaine these pencil drawings of people, of Black Americans migrating, I think, from the South to the West. I think that's what the drawings were. And just the idea of like showing people in a dignified manner was something we really wanted to do, because we felt that Nigeria has this reputation that precedes it, for right or wrong, of being like this dangerous place that everybody's like scared, or like you're going to get ripped off. But actually the Nigeria I know is full of humor. It's full of silliness. It's really light. It definitely has a lot of those things. I'm not trying to repackage it, but I think on the surface, like, people are just trying to exist, and the language that they form is humor, is charity. Like, people are really giving, people are really honest, people want to share, they're really curious. And we wanted to show the Nigeria that we grew up in, the Nigeria that we know, and not a caricature or a stereotype. And so shooting on film, shooting from a child's perspective, it really allowed us to do that. It allowed us to kind of create this magical world, and also honor the feeling and the aura of the ancestors and the nature and the water and everything that's around. Because, yeah, there's no getting around the fact that we're people who are married to the land, actually, and the land has such a big impact on the way we are. It's, you know, Lagos is mangrove, is lakes, it's swamp, you know, and actually it's probably as close to like your Louisiana or something like that. And actually there's just so much in the air, there's so much in the water, there's so much in the foliage, that we really wanted to, and even the color of showing the film, the color of Lagos, the light's different in the time we shot. There's Hamatan, which is sands coming from the Sahara, and it kind of puts dust on everything and has this sort of sepia sort of like softness on light and stuff. And yeah, all of that we just really wanted to embrace, and not make something that look aesthetically like seductive, I would say.
Set in Hope 93. So let's talk about the time period, since it was, you know, fiction and historical fiction set against a very personal story. Why 93? Talk about, because you could have set this particular story, it's such a relatable human story of fathers, sons, you know, the wife, their family story, but you set it at a really important time of hope and politics and military and machine guns and handheld chaos. And talk to us about the why and the when.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, fantastic question. I think, I mean, we knew, so my brother had written a short story in 2012, which was My Father's Shadow, but it was like 20 pages or something. And once we made Lizard, once that won Sundance, all right, we're going to get opportunity to develop a feature. And we were like, okay, let's do something that honors our childhood in a way that maybe we never really spoke about. And by honoring our childhood, maybe we'd be able to honor our family. And then we build out from there. By honoring our family, maybe we can honor where we're from. And maybe if we honor where we're from, we honor Nigeria. How do we honor Nigeria? What period feels like it could have a certain parallel with the sort of the promise of fatherhood that these boys never quite receive? What feels like a promise to Nigeria of fatherhood that Nigeria never received? And if the family is the micro, then the macro had to be 1993, June 12, MKO Abiola. A massively quick history lesson. From 1960, once we got independence from the British, there was like a lot of remnants of this sort of like colonial exercise that really fractured Nigeria tribally. So we quickly spun from an independent state into a brutal genocidal civil war against a certain tribe of people in the southeast, mainly the Igbo and the tribes surrounding there. And basically, once the civil war ended, we were locked into a marriage of military dictatorship and numerous coups d'etats over coup d'etats, 8 coup d'etats, 5 successful, 3 unsuccessful. And by the late 80s, early 90s, there was talk of moving back to democracy. We'd been sort of castigated by the Commonwealth. We were like reaching failed nation state. Anything you want to throw in the pot, go for it. That's basically what we were. And, there was a promise of this election in June 12, 93, and my mother's generation, obviously they'd been through military dictatorship since independence. They witnessed all of this, and they were quite fatigued by the military. So that anything that offered an opportunity to fulfill this potential of the African giant, they were all in. Like everyone was in, And then here comes this maverick politician, and he was a businessman. He was a Muslim. He was from the Yoruba tribe. He married multiple wives. And I say that to say that, he married wives from different territories, which is actually a real skill because it means it endeared him to those cultures and those ties, and people felt like he was one of them. So like he'd effectively like won the votes from getting married. Like he'd already got everyone's position. He was a philanthropist. He had a football team. He had a newspaper. You name it. He'd probably been working at it for a while. And on top of that, he was a very shrewd businessman. He always protected his investments. So people wanted that so that the imperial exercise in Nigeria and everyone taking our oil would now be focused in on us. 93, June 12, he runs this election. Everyone knows he's a standout candidate. The other candidate, he's from the north. He's also a rich businessman, but he's less charismatic. And, anyway, Abiola wins. We had international observers say it was the freest and fairest election in African history at the time. And on June 12, the dictator Ibrahim Babangida annulled the election. No, he just said there were some irregularities, which was false. And there'd been, and for the safety of the nation, he had to cancel it. So basically on that day, my parents' generation had gone from the enthusiasm of this man who was going to lead us into something amazing to a complete deflation of a promise and hope being unfulfilled yet again. And and basically we thought that felt like a perfect parallel with the story we were trying to tell. And not only that, I think also Abiola also represents a part of our history, our contemporary history, that wasn't taught in schools. Like history was also banned in schools under the military. So our film was also like a point to like reintroduce a character that's not too far gone. 30 years for loads of people, for a younger generation, probably my generation, I should say, is quite a long period of time. But me and my brother, we were the same age as the boys in 93. So you can probably do the math. But at that point, we lived through that. I remember going to school and the election being cancelled and us having to rush home and there being a curfew and people being lynched in the street, and you had to put some foliage on your car so you show you were with Abiola and you could get clear passage to where you're going. And it was pretty traumatic. But again, I think Africans and Nigerians and maybe even Black people generally, we have a culture of not talking about traumatic events. We have a way of, mainly for protection, actually, mainly not to sort of bring up these wounds and reflect on our own trauma. But I think now that we're in an age where we have access to therapy and know how things can be cathartic for us, we thought to make the story in a way that doesn't exceptionalize the trauma, but like tries to handle it in a soft way and just and honor the fact that generation went through that and allow a younger generation to see part of their history that they're not aware of. And I think it made for good tension as well in the story.
Absolutely. I could talk to you about this film for many more hours, but I know that the Guild wants us to wrap up the conversation. So I will say thank you for the history lesson. And thank you for this. It's a very bittersweet love letter to Lagos, to your father. And really, I think it is a gift for all of us. Thank you for your work, bringing art house cinema into the conversation about Nigerian film, about African cinema. And Eshe, thank you.
Oh, wow. I was just going to say a real thank you to the DGA for hosting this. Thank you, Rachel, for being an exceptional host. I wish I had you in every screening, to be honest. But really thank you guys for making the time. Again, everyone is always interested in Nigeria to a certain level, and I think it's a real honor for me. Obviously, I can't see the people in the room. It's a real honor that people would take time out of their day to come and watch this film. I know it probably has a bit of a reputation, so people do want to see it, but it really means a lot because I know probably people in the room are working professionals and really busy professionals. So again, it just really means a lot that you would come and watch this film. And just thank you to the DGA for putting this on as well, and you, Rachel, for being brilliant.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.